Coming up, Korea's Constitutional Court has upheld a controversial anti-corruption law that puts strict limits on gifts to journalists, private school teachers, and public officials. Local police say North Korea was behind the hacking of South Korea's leading online shopping mall Interpark, which resulted in a leak of the personal information of 10 million customers. The South Korean government has rolled out a proposal to revise the country's tax code to give a much-needed boost to the slumbering economy. Stay tuned for these stories and more. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, July 29th here in Seoul. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Hwang Jie. Thank you for joining us. Korea's Constitutional Court has upheld an anti-corruption law which will now go into effect in September. Though considered controversial by some, the country's political parties welcome the decision, saying it will help create a more transparent society. Ji Myung-gil has our top story.
The Constitutional Court has issued its ruling on the so-called Kim Young-nan law, named after the person who proposed it, saying it does not violate the Constitution. The National Assembly passed the tough law, which is aimed at deterring corruption in the public sector, in March of last year. Under the law, it will be legal for civil servants, journalists, and educators hired by private schools to receive individual gifts of goods or services worth more than $887, up to a combined total of $2,655 a year. The law also makes it illegal to accept meals exceeding $27, presents in excess of $44, or receiving more than $89 in money for a wedding or funeral. But controversy arose over the law's inclusion of journalists and private school teachers and their spouses. The conflict was exacerbated by the fact that the lawmakers who passed the act and were supposed to be its targets had excluded themselves. Shortly after the law's passage, the Korean Bar Association, the Journalists Association of Korea, and private school teachers filed a constitutional appeal, claiming that the law puts excessive regulation on the private sector. The court's ruling said, however, the press and private schools would not be able to prevent corruption without being subject to the law. The two main rival parties welcomed the ruling.
The Saenuri Party respects the court's decision. We will make efforts with the opposition bloc to enhance the transparency of the public sector through the Kim Young-nan Act.
The Constitutional Court has shown support for the purpose of legislating this law to make our society more fair and transparent. The ruling has also finally put an end to the ongoing controversies surrounding it.
The minor opposition People's Party and the Justice Party echo the view. But the law is still drawing a backlash from restaurants, retailers, farmers, and many other business owners who claim the law will damage their business. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Late last year, Japan and Korea agreed upon setting up a foundation dedicated to the victims of Japan's wartime sex slaves, and that opened in Seoul yesterday. But according to our Kwon Jang-ho, the move was met with anger by civic groups from the very beginning.
The Reconciliation and Healing Foundation was launched on Thursday, funded by Japan, with the aim of compensating Korean women who were forced by the Japanese military to serve on frontline brothels during World War II. They're euphemistically known as comfort women. Tokyo promised over $9 million to fund the project after a landmark agreement was reached between Korea and Japan last December to try and settle the issue. But according to Japanese media outlets, the two governments are still discussing the details of the arrangement, so the funds will not be transferred until next month at the earliest. One reason for the hold-up was thought to have been a desire on the Japanese side to negotiate the removal of a privately installed statue in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul, representing the comfort women victims. But the new chair of the foundation, Kim Tae-yeon, has strongly denied this, stressing the funds will only be used in efforts to heal the emotional scars of the victims and restore their dignity.
The statue and the $9 million fund have nothing to do with each other, so you can forget about the idea that the money coming or not depends on what happens with the statue.
Korea's foreign ministry added the foundation will consult with the surviving victims, of which there are only thought to be 40, on how best to use the funds.
Our government is listening to the victims' views, and we are taking them into consideration in our talks with Japan.
But not all the victims are happy with the deal. Several of them have rejected the agreement signed last December, saying it does not go far enough.
We have fought for the same thing for the last 25 years. We want an official apology and legal compensation. Money is not the issue. It's about restoring our dignity.
There's also some disapproval among the general public, which was manifested at the foundation's launch. 20 student activists stormed the press conference and held a sit-in protest. Chairperson Kim was also taken to hospital after she was pepper sprayed by a protester while attempting to leave the building. Kwon Jang-woo, Arirang News.
Hackers in North Korea have broken into a popular online shopping mall in South Korea, putting the personal data of millions of customers in jeopardy. Our Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
South Korean police have conducted a detailed probe into the recent hacking of Interpark Corporation, which runs a major online mall. And on Thursday, they revealed the culprit, North Korea. The Interpark servers were broken into in May, compromising the data of some 10 million users. The police said the IP addresses used in the attack were identical to previous hackings by the North, adding that the malicious code used was also very similar. Experts say the hacking of companies by Pyongyang is an attempt to raise foreign currency, as the latest economic sanctions against it for its nuclear and ICBM tests earlier this year have taken a toll.
By obtaining customers' personal information, they can hack into other sites and also blackmail the company for money.
Soon after the cyber attack, the hackers contacted Interpark executives via email, demanding some $2.7 million in bitcoins, the virtual currency tradable online. Of the 34 emails sent to Interpark executives, one of them included vocabulary used only in the North, a strong indication that Pyongyang was behind the attack. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The Korean government has rolled out a proposal to revise the country's tax code, adding to its efforts to support the economy. That's on top of a budget supplement plan it submitted to the National Assembly earlier this week. Kim Min-ji has the story.
Propping up the economy and providing more stability for the public. These are the main pillars of the government's tax code revision proposal.
Korea faces uncertainties at home and abroad, from slowing exports to a contraction in investment to concerns about Brexit. To strengthen the economy and boost job creation, we feel it's time for the active implementation of fiscal measures.
To do so, the government first plans to foster future growth engines by offering up to 30% in tax credits for companies involved in research and development in 11 new growth industries, such as biohealth, robotics, and future cars. To encourage employment, the government looks to offer tax benefits for hiring and investment in all service sectors, including sports services providers and cafes. The revised tax code also proposes tax benefits for troubled companies that voluntarily undergo corporate restructuring. As part of its efforts to give Korean households a boost, the revision seeks an extension of tax deductions for credit card spending until 2019, with the amount deducted changing depending on people's income levels. Tax support is also offered for families that have babies as the country faces a chronically low birth rate. On top of that, the revision aims to improve fair taxation in the system and transparency by increasing capital gains taxes and offering benefits for firms that boost wages and investment. Through these changes, which would take effect next year if approved, the government is expecting to raise the tax revenue by roughly $280 million annually.
In the past few years, Korea has seen a slump in corporate investment, consumption, and exports, and the revision doesn't really include groundbreaking changes that would improve these conditions.
The government's proposal comes about a month after announced a stimulus package to speed up growth. But experts say the impact will be minuscule unless these efforts are coupled with measures to bolster corporate competitiveness and investment. Another concern is a separate bill looking to raise corporate taxes, as opponents say a heavier tax burden on companies could cancel out the expected benefits of the proposed tax revision. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's Creative Economy Innovation Centers, launched to support local startups, are celebrating a year of fostering creative ideas and boosting economic growth. Our Kim Hae-sung shares some of their successes as they mark their first anniversary.
6 startups shared their successes at an event for the centers that helped them get off the ground. Korea's Creative Economy and Innovation Centers were launched by the government 1 year ago to foster the burgeoning startup environment in Korea. The Minister of Science, ICT and Future Planning outlined their successes at a press conference in Seoul on Thursday.
Our centers have provided networks and know-how to startups and SMEs in Korea and expanded our creative economy platforms. We plan to continue our efforts and aim to become one of the top 7 startup nations in the world in a year or two.
As of July this year, the 17 centers around the country have supported over 2,800 Korean startups and SMEs, helping them raise $250 million in funding and created up to 1,400 new jobs. Since opening a year ago, Creative Economy Innovation Centers like this one in Seoul have offered one-on-one consulting services and customized support like funding and networking to help startups turn their ideas into products. Many of the startups have seen their collaborations with the centers come to fruition, including the smartwatch company. It makes smartwatches that can turn text messages into Braille for visually impaired users in real time.
We started 2014 of June, and we were only college students who had only ideas. So from this center, we got a lot of support, including mentoring. Recently, we could sell our product in 40 different countries, and we have raised $5 million.
In addition to funding, some small and medium-sized enterprises like this one have been able to launch their products through networking.
Through the center, we were able to network and show our ideas to large conglomerates, and we're going to launch our slim-size speaker later this year.
To further boost the momentum, the Future Ministry plans to inject more resources into the innovation centers, which means Korea is likely to see the launch of even more startups in the coming years. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye made a surprise visit to the port city of Ulsan yesterday in the midst of her 5-day summer vacation. The trip is part of her efforts to boost domestic spending and the local tourism industry. Here's our Kim Mo-kyun.
Earlier this month, President Park Geun-hye said that she hopes to spend her summer vacation in Korea and urged other members of the cabinet to take up the cause of supporting the country's tourism industry. On Thursday, day 4 of the president's vacation, she made a surprise visit to the city of Ulsan. She shook hands with residents of the southern port city, which has faced difficulties due to massive restructuring in the shipbuilding industry. She also met and interacted with the locals while walking by the Shimli bamboo grove. Thursday's visit marks the first time since 2013 that the president has spent her vacation outside of her official residence. She spent her summer vacation there in 2014 to deal with the aftermath of this Haewol ferry disaster that left more than 300 people dead or missing. The following year, she was busy handling the outbreak of the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
In France, the second culprit behind an ISIS-linked attack on a church that left a priest dead was a teenager, reportedly identified by security services as a potential security threat. 19-year-old Abdel Malik Perejong was identified following DNA testing. Perejong and an accomplice, Adel Kermish, also 19, targeted the church north of Paris during a morning mass. A police source told Reuters that security services had opened a special file on Perejong on June 29th amid suspicions he had been radicalized. The government has said there are about 10,500 people with so-called S-files related to potential jihadist activities in France. The accomplice, Kermish, was not only known to security services, but was also ordered to wear an electronic bracelet. In Brazil, a week ahead of the Olympics, a Brazilian man has been arrested on terrorism charges after he posted comments online about the Islamic State militant group. 28-year-old Sharik Kalaun, a Brazilian citizen of Lebanese descent, was taken overnight to Ari Franco prison in Rio and arrested for having posted comments on Islamic State, according to his lawyer. Officials gave little detail about the arrest, and the Justice Department said only that the arrest was made under anti-terrorism laws and that the indictment remains sealed. Separately, Brazilian federal police and the country's intelligence agency are searching for an Iranian man who is suspected of plotting terror attacks. These new developments come a week after 12 men were arrested on accusations of forming a cell to discuss potential attacks at the time of the Rio Olympics and swearing loyalty to the Islamic State. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. I'm Hwang Jae. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye for now.